50?
Yeah, today's date is Sunday, March 16th. It is 2014, around 23:50 hours. This is Detective Jeff Stone with the Albuquerque Police Department, and I am here at 812 Piedra Vista Road Northeast. This is in reference to an officer-involved shooting that occurred late or earlier this evening, I should say. This is in reference to case number 140023683. Present in the room is
Agent Jeremy Vaughn, New Mexico State Police.
and we are here interviewing. Ma'am, can you state your name?
Kristine, Thickstun.
Alrighty, and
Thank you. Do you have a driver's license as well?
Sure.
and just for the tape, ma'am, can you spell your name for me?
First name is Kristine, Kristine. Last name is Thickstun, spelled Thickstun.
And your date of birth?
December 16th, 1982.
And what's your address?
812 Piedra Vista Road Northeast, Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87123.
Okay. And what's a good phone number for you?
Area code 513-314-5216.
And who do you live with at this residence?
My husband, Alexander Thickstun, and we have 2 dogs.
Okay. And how long have you been living at this residence for?
About a month and a half. We got here January 31st, February 1st, right around there.
Okay. All right. So if you could just run through, starting from what led to the police response today, all the way until basically we met tonight. Just kind of everything you observed, heard, or saw.
Okay. So earlier today, my husband took a hike. I just took a nap. So he went out there hiking, and then he came back at one point, and then he took the dogs out with him. So he took the dogs out there hiking. I was still taking a nap, and the dogs woke me up before he left. He left, and then he came back, and he had shown me some photos of some stuff that he had seen. He could tell that some guy was camping out there, had his belongings out there, up in some rocks where we had seen some stuff in the past a few weeks ago. Do you want me to talk about that now or later on? The few weeks ago stuff.
We can talk about that later.
Okay. So he had shown me some photos of that, and then he had also said that one of the neighbors a couple houses down had approached him regarding that same stuff that he had seen up there, saying that the neighbor had been chased down by some other guy. So Alex came back, and then the neighbor had indicated to him that the man that was living up there was coming back. So Alex he had told me that, and then when he had seen that there was somebody out there, he had shown me. So I looked out the window from upstairs, and I had seen that there's this guy sitting up there on the rocks, and so at that point he called the cops. So then he called the cops, and then he hadn't heard anything for a while, so he called him back to make sure somebody was still coming. And then not too long later, they came. The cops, 2 guys showed up, two cops. They had 2 different vehicles, and they talked to Alex. He had shown them some stuff in the backyard. I was in here with the dogs. And then Alex came back in, and he told me that they were going to go down to Copper, and at the end of Copper, that way they didn't have to cut through the yard. So they went down there, and then they had proceeded to go up the trail to find this guy, and we kind of watched them from out back. We were just watching and hoping that they just, the goal was just to convince the guy to leave, kind of thing, And so Alex had started recording some stuff. It sounded, the guy was getting very verbal. you know.
Yeah, just go ahead and shut it behind you.
So he was recording stuff, and then Alex had told me that it sounded like the guy had pulled, you know, a knife on him, you know, and so then the cops had kind of backed off a little bit and called in reinforcement. Not too much later, a bunch of cops came. I think there were about 6 or 7 in total when the reinforcement came, and then slowly more and more would come. So there were some, originally it was just Albuquerque Police Department, and then later there were some New Mexico State, and then there were some other unmarked cars that came. I think in total there were about 15 or so. And he was up there recording stuff, watching it and listening to it, and for the most part I was down here showing them how to get out to the back, you know, so that they knew where to go if they wanted to see before they actually went out there. So I was kind of doing that. And the dogs were barking because they had dogs with them.
Right.
2 of the cops had dogs.
Yeah.
So I was trying to keep the dogs under control. I watched a little bit up there with the binoculars to try to get a good eye on what the guy looked like. I didn't hear so much. I didn't have the door open. I tried to stay inside. But when I did hear, like when I came out here in the front to show him, you know, at certain points he was very loud. You know, I couldn't necessarily make out what he was saying, but he was definitely yelling. There were sometimes that, you know, there was one time I think I opened the door and I heard him threatening to, you know, to kill the cops, you know, like, oh, I'll kill you kind of thing. So it wasn't, I was telling Alex, I'm like, you need to come in, because I didn't want somebody seeing him. You know, I was a little concerned for him. I did see the point where they had shot him. At that point I was just sitting up there with the binoculars, and then there was like a bunch of cops they were all spread out at that point. You know, originally they were kind of right on top of them, you know, a small group of 6 or 7, and then as more of them got there, you know, they kind of spread out on the mountain and had different spots. There was like when they went to shoot him, which that was probably a couple hours after the first guys got here. So it took a while. There was a lot of arguing and talking and whatnot going on. But when they went to shoot him, there was like a flash and a loud bang, or boom, actually more so. And he was still standing after that. And I heard a few shots. He was still standing. And then I heard some more shots. And then I saw him fall down. He was behind a rock, so I couldn't tell if he was standing or falling completely or not. You know, but he wasn't hit on the first couple shots. It took a few.
Okay.
And then I saw him, they took him away in the stretcher and whatnot.
Okay. So let's go back to the beginning of the day. So you said that your husband had gone for a hike, mm-hmm. and you were going to go take a nap? Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you remember about what time this was?
Let's see. Maybe around like 1 or 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know approximately how long your husband was gone for on that hike?
I think about an hour or so.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he came back, and then he came upstairs to get some stuff, and the dogs came up, and their wet noses woke me up. So.
Okay. So you said when he came back to get some stuff, do you know specifically what it is that he came back to get?
No.
Okay.
But I know he did. At that point, he took the dogs with him.
Okay. So the first time he left, when you went to take a nap, the dogs were here with you?
Yeah.
Okay. And he comes back, gets some stuff, and then he takes the dogs, mm-hmm. and does he go back up to go up the hill?
Yeah, he went back out there.
Okay. And when he first comes back, did he show you the pictures then of what was up there, or was it when he came back the second time?
No, it was the second time because I was still like half asleep.
Oh, okay. So he left. About how long was he gone for the second time?
Maybe about another hour. I don't remember exactly because I was taking a nap. So.
Okay. And then he comes back, and is that when he shows you the photos?
Yeah.
And from the best that you can remember, what did you see in those photos?
some of it was just personal belongings. It looked like there were a few books. There's a decent amount of stuff. I was looking at it, I'm like, I don't think I could carry it in one trip, and it was...
Okay. So it's not something that like you could put into like one bag and carry it away?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So it probably would have taken 2 or 3 trips if you were in it, just trying to carry it yourself.
Did you see any items that looked like maybe someone was staying there, like sleeping bag or anything like that?
Yeah, it looked like he was camping out there, like he had some clothes and whatnot.
Okay. And when your husband was showing you these photos, did he say anything about why he was taking the photos?
Well, we had seen, there were a couple instances before today where we had seen a couple gentlemen arguing up there, and then I think a few days later we had seen a couple gentlemen leaving in the morning.
Okay.
So we knew that there had been some people up there, homeless or whatnot. So, and he was hiking, and when he was hiking, he saw this stuff. So,
okay.
So he took some pictures of it.
Okay. And did you guys believe prior to this day that people were living in that area?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say on a regular basis, but there were a couple times here and there that we saw people, it looked like they were living up there. And I don't know if it was, every night, but definitely on occasion.
Okay. So after he showed you these photos, what did your husband do next?
He had talked to one of the guys down the street. He had told me the guy's name was Vic. I didn't talk to him myself. And I guess Vic had explained that the guy was on his way back. So he had told Alex that. And so at that point, then he called the cops. Okay.
Did you hear that conversation?
No. He had just told me what had happened. So he was outside.
Okay. So your husband said he called the police. And then were you here when the first police officer showed up?
Yes.
Okay. Can you just briefly describe what those officers were wearing?
They were wearing like a black Albuquerque Police Department uniform, just a regular police uniform.
Okay. And did you see what type of vehicles they were driving?
They both had SUVs.
Okay. And when they marked up, did they say police on them?
They did.
Okay. Now, when these officers left to go and walk over to speak with the subject, did you actually go and watch that encounter happen?
I had seen a little bit of it. I had seen where they were starting to go up the hill. And then I didn't hear so much, but I was looking out the window, so I saw, that they were talking back and forth and whatnot. I didn't hear Alex would come and tell me stuff because he was sitting outside.
Okay.
So he'd tell me that, hey, they pulled the knife, threatening to kill him, at that point. But I hadn't, heard it. I had just seen that, it was kind of getting, involved. And
okay. Was there any point in time when you went out there and observed what was going on that you heard what this guy was saying or what the police officers were saying?
Yes, there was a point where I cracked the door, and probably more so when there were 6 or 7 cops there. They were threatening. The gentleman was threatening to kill them.
Okay.
And
did he say how, or he was just saying?
He didn't say how. He just said, I'll kill you.
Okay.
And he seemed pretty mad with just police in general when he talked about them. How he didn't really have any trust with the police, and he had talked about some situation that he was in off of Louisiana somewhere, some incident where he was involved with the cops or whatever, and he was claiming to be involved with DOD and other stuff. So I heard that. If there's anything else. Most of the rest of it, I couldn't tell what they were saying because I was out here in the front helping the guys.
Okay.
Just kind of get back there. So.
Okay. And you said approximately about 15 police officers had showed up?
Yeah.
Okay. Was it all APD or did you see any other officers?
There was a lot of APD. There were a couple state police. There were 2 state cars out here. And then there were, I want to say about 3 or 4 unmarked vehicles. And they wore almost like a flight suit, like the green outfits, and they had the body armor, and I think 1 or 2 of them even had helmets on.
Okay. Did you know what unit or that they belonged to?
I don't know what they belonged to, but I know at one point Alex was doing videos, and he was taking videos of all the cars, and they actually said, hey, don't get these ones in the video because of the missions that some of them do.
Oh, okay.
So he went in and he's like, okay, I'll delete that one. That's fine. No big deal.
Okay. All right. So about how long from when the first 2 police officers came up to around the time that the shooting happened, how much time do you say went by?
Oh, the shooting was probably closer to like 7:30. So it would have been at least a couple hours.
Couple hours?
Yeah.
Okay. So in between that entire time when the police officers were speaking with the subject in the shooting, what would you say was going on between the officers and the male subject?
They were talking back and forth. Mostly the gentleman, he was doing a lot of the talking. I know it seemed like a couple different people tried to talk to him. And at first they were kind of closer to him, but then as more of them got there, it's kind of like they spread out. Some of the guys with the rifles would be further out and whatnot. Different people came out with dogs, so it's like they were positioning themselves for whatever they were going to do.
Okay.
But it took a while. They were, there was an hour and a half or so where they were just talking.
Okay. So getting to the point where the shooting happened, where were you when that happened?
I was sitting up in the family room on the floor on the inside.
Okay.
I was looking through the binoculars.
Okay. And you said through the binoculars you could see the subject the officers were talking to?
Mm-hmm.
Could you describe for me this guy?
He's about a medium build. He's a little bit darker complexion, I'd say, either African American or he could be a Hispanic or Indian background. I couldn't quite tell. He had like dark black hair, kind of raggedy. He had a dark beard that was, you could tell it hadn't been trimmed in a while. He was wearing like a bandana or something on his head, a dark one. At first he had long pants on and a long shirt. I think it was a darker color kind of shirt. But then eventually he had put on this Gap like hoodie, like a gray sweater. And then right before he got shot, he had put on he had a backpack.
Okay.
That he had put on. So.
Okay.
And I know at one point when they were talking at the beginning, a lot of the times he had his hands in his pockets. But at one point I did see something in his hand. I couldn't figure out what it was though.
Okay. Which hand was that?
I think it was in his left hand.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And was this right before the shooting happened, or was this some time beforehand?
This was earlier.
Earlier.
So towards the beginning, he had something in his hand. When it got closer to the shooting, he didn't always have something in his hand, but then, right closer to the shooting, he had his hands in the pocket most of the time.
Okay.
And he would do the different thing, in the different pockets, like he maybe had cargo pockets too. So you couldn't tell, what he was doing kind of thing.
Okay. So he would kind of switch up which pockets he was reaching into? So pants pockets, hoodie pocket?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Had some pretty jacked up teeth too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. At any time, did you observe any other civilian people up there besides him?
Yeah, so at the beginning, before there were a bunch of them, so when there were like 6 or 7, there were some people like hikers or bikers off to the side, and they were just trying to see what was going on, I think. And eventually, once more cops arrived on scene, they tried to control that. So they got people to come down from the hill and get out of the way.
Okay.
Because some of them were just kids and they were just curious.
Curious as what was going on?
Yeah.
Okay. So when the shooting happened, did you look through your binos the entire time?
Yeah.
Okay. So you said you heard like or saw a flash and then heard a boom?
Yeah.
Do you know what that was?
I don't know what it was. It was a little bit to the right of the gentleman.
Okay. Like how?
The flash was.
Approximately how far away from him?
Maybe like 5 to 10 feet.
5 to 10 feet?
Yeah.
Okay. And when that happened, what was his response?
He was still standing.
Okay.
You know, I was actually kind of surprised because it made me jump some.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, wow, if he's still standing, you know.
So it didn't really seem to affect him at all?
No.
Okay. So once that happened, what's the next immediate thing you saw?
So there were a few shots. I didn't see the shots, but I heard them.
Okay.
And so I was focused more on him. I didn't see like the cops that were going after him so much. But there were a few shots, and he was still standing. And then there was another shot, and it looked like they got him, and he fell down. You know. And I couldn't tell exactly how he fell because it was the view I had. He was behind a rock.
Okay. So the whole time you say he's behind a rock, was he behind this rock the entire time when you're looking at him?
Yeah, because there was. So if you're looking out, there's a rock, and then he kind of like was behind it, and then the cops were like to the right of him.
Okay. How much of his body was masked by the rock that you couldn't see?
It would depend because he would go back and forth and then up and down. Like every once in a while, he'd try to grab something that he had, or he'd get closer to the cops. So some of the times you could see most of his body, you know, and other times you could see, you know, maybe from the waist up.
Okay. So when he was shot, could you see his entire body?
No. So when he was shot, I could probably see, you know, maybe waist up.
Okay. Could you see where his hands were at that time?
I could not.
Okay. About how many shots did you hear?
In total, maybe about 5.
Okay. Were they all rapid succession? Did they all happen at once?
They were pretty close to each other. Yeah, it's. I do remember hearing, you know, a few, and he was still standing, and then, you know, maybe around the 4th or so he got hit.
Okay. You had mentioned earlier that there were some officers with dogs.
Yes.
Okay. Were those officers ever up there close to him with the dogs?
They were actually. I think I don't know if I saw both of them. I think I saw at least one of them up there close to him, like right when they were doing the shooting.
Okay. Did you ever see?
The dog was whining afterwards.
Okay. Did you ever see if they released the dog on him?
The dog was released at one point. It was almost like it was at the same time as the shooting, you know.
Okay. Could you see if the dog actually bit him or not?
I couldn't see that.
Okay. Was that masked behind the rock?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But then you said, so the dog was released, and then that kind of coincided with the shooting?
Yeah.
And then you heard the dog whining?
Yeah.
Was it whining like it was hurt, or?
Not like it was hurt. Like, so it was when they arrived here, the dog was whining. They put on the nozzle,
kind of like
the muzzle on.
Whining in anticipation, like a dog will do.
Yeah.
Like wanting to do something.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you said about 4 or 5 shots, and you said on the 4th one he went down.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you see how he fell?
He dropped pretty fast. Like he was standing for the most part upright, you know, even when the first few shots, and then it's like he just fell down.
Okay.
I don't know which way. I just, you know, I screamed to Alex, I'm like, he's down, you know.
Okay.
He was just behind the rocks, so I couldn't tell. You know.
Okay. Did you hear when the shots were going on, or immediately afterwards? Did you hear if the police officers were saying anything to him?
I couldn't hear at that point, so I was sitting over here and the door was still shut, so I couldn't hear what they were saying.
So you could only hear the shots and the bang. You couldn't really hear any dialogue.
Right.
Okay. After he went down, did you see what the officers did next?
So most of them backed off and went down the hill, and there were a couple of them that stayed up there, and it's like they were watching him and checking on him kind of thing. And then I noticed there was like a policeman that came up, you know, was checking his vitals, it seemed like, and whatnot. And then they brought a stretcher up, and they put him on the stretcher, and I saw that they took the stretcher down, and the ambulance came up to get him.
Okay. But
you could tell that he was bloody, you know, when he was on the stretcher.
Okay.
They tried asking him his name, and I don't think he was responding. But.
Okay. Alrighty.
Who was using the binoculars? You, your husband, or both?
I think for the most part just me. So he was in the other room or outside with a camera and his phone. There may have been times where I was outside that he could have been using them, you know, when I was out here with the police. But for the most part, I was sitting in here using them.
Okay. And I was a little confused, and I apologize. If you were actually using the binos and looking when the shots were fired?
I was.
Okay, so were you able to see the actual shots fired? You said you couldn't see the officers, but you could see him, is that right?
Well, I was looking at him, and I saw the flash, and I heard the boom, and I heard the shots get fired. I didn't actually see the shots get fired from the officers, but I could hear them.
Okay.
And then I saw him when he dropped. I just couldn't tell which way he fell because it's behind the rocks.
Okay. So at the time you hear the shots, are you looking at him? Maybe did you flinch, or was it?
I was looking at him.
Okay. So you could see him. Could you see impact of bullets hitting near him or hitting him at all?
I didn't see any of the bullets near him where, if they hit anywhere, I couldn't see any of those. I could hear him, and then I could tell, you know, how he reacted. You know, he was standing after the flash, and he was still standing after the first few bullets. You know, but then, you know, when like that fourth bullet hit, that's when he fell down.
Okay. And did you see any specific physical response? If it hit me in the shoulder, it might turn me this way. If it hit me in the stomach, it might bend me over.
I couldn't tell where it hit him. I just know it knocked him down, for sure.
All right. And then you said that you could read gap on his shirt?
Yes.
Okay. About how far do you think he was from where you guys are looking at him?
I don't know, maybe a quarter of a mile, if that.
Okay. And his emblem on his shirt?
Yeah, it was a little bit bigger than this, you know, so.
So maybe 6 to 8 inches tall?
Yeah, about
emblem?
6 inches, yeah.
Okay. All right. You said you could see his teeth?
Yes.
So with the binos?
Yeah.
Okay, you were able to see pretty closely.
Yeah, he had a lot of gaps between his teeth.
All right. And you said that he had made what appeared to be some threats?
Yes.
At some point? What did you hear as far as threats are concerned?
He would tell the cops that were trying to negotiate and talk to him, like, I'm going to kill you.
Okay.
And that's generally what I had heard. You know, he would say, you know, that. He didn't say anything specifically like, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that kind of thing. It was just, I'm going to kill you.
Okay, so he didn't say how he would kill them, just that he would.
Right.
Okay. And do you know how many times he may have said something like that?
I heard it maybe like 2 times, but then Alex had told me, you know, several other times that he had made that same threat. You know, like, I'll murder you or I'll kill you kind of thing.
Did you hear anything that the police said back at any time?
I couldn't hear them so much. He was screaming. He was pretty vocal and pretty loud and upset. You know, the cops were a lot calmer, you know, so I couldn't hear what they were saying.
Okay. Did you see anybody else around? You said there were some hikers and some other things. Did you see anybody with the subject at any time today?
No, not today.
All right. About the time of the shooting, what was the lighting like outside?
It was still, let's see, the sun had started to go down already. It was getting dark, but it wasn't completely dark out yet.
You could still see
Yeah,
pretty clearly?
yeah.
Okay.
Especially with the binoculars. Have you seen through the binoculars that we have?
No. Pretty good.
You can see, they're like fancy, like look at stars. You know, you can see stuff on the moon kind of binoculars.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
All right.
they're pretty
Yeah.
pretty high tech.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's an aerospace engineer, so
Got it.
yeah.
Nice. Okay, and actually, forgot to ask you this. Could you estimate about how close the officers were to him during, right before the shooting?
I say about 15, 20 feet.
15, 20 feet?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, you said that there had been some past instances with this subject and possibly another subject. Can you just kind of go through a little bit what you know about what's been going on up there?
Yeah, so 2 or 3 weeks ago, there were, I guess our first incident, the dogs were barking like crazy, and so we didn't know what was going on, if it was just that we were new to the neighborhood or whatnot, so we were checking on what was going on. We walked outside, you know, to see what was going on, and we heard 2 guys yelling at each other. You know, they were in some sort of argument about something. And so Alex had called the cops at that point to get somebody to come out, and he had kind of told them where they were, and we never saw anybody come out, so he had actually followed up on it, and it sounded like they had sent somebody out down to the trails, or maybe they had looked out and they didn't see anything. It was pretty dark because it was late at night, and eventually the guys got quiet.